The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with beings from 100 different worlds. Some had scales, some had feathers, and some looked like nothing humans had ever seen before. They all sat in their floating chairs, arranged in a massive circle around the central platform. The lights were bright, and the air smelled like a strange mix of flowers and metal. Ambassador stood alone on that platform. She was a tall woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She had served humanity for 30 years in this hall. She had shaken hands with creatures that had no hands. She had smiled at faces that had no mouths. She had fought for peace when others wanted war. Today, she knew her fight was over. The representative was speaking. He was a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms. His voice was loud and filled with anger. "Humans are dangerous," he said. "They spread too fast. They take too much. They must be controlled." Listened in silence. She had heard these words before. They had never liked humans. They were afraid of them. Humans had arrived in the galaxy only 200 years ago, but they had grown strong very quickly. They built ships that could fly faster than anyone thought possible. They made medicines that cured diseases no one else could cure. They grew food on dead worlds where nothing should grow. The other species had welcomed human help at first, but now some of them were scared. Humans were too good at everything. It made them uncomfortable. "I call for a vote," they said. "New restrictions on human expansion, new limits on human trade, new controls on human technology." Stepped forward. "May I speak?" she asked. The High Chancellor nodded. He was a creature with large black eyes and thin arms. His name was, and he had led the council for 50 years. He did not like humans either, but he followed the rules. Looked around the hall. She saw faces that she had known for decades. She saw species that humans had helped again and again. She took a deep breath. "Before you vote," she said, "I want to remind you of a few things. When the plague killed millions, human doctors found the cure. We gave it away for free. When the crops failed, human farmers taught them new ways to grow food. We asked for nothing in return. When pirates attacked your trade ships, human soldiers died to protect them. We never complained." She paused. The hall was silent. "In the last 100 years, human mediators have stopped 3 wars between council species. Human engineers have built power stations on 40 worlds. Human teachers have educated millions of alien children. We did all of this because we believed in partnership. We believed in friendship." The representative laughed. "You did it to control us," he said, "to make us need you." Shook her head slowly. "No," she said, "we did it because it was right." The vote happened anyway. One by one, the species raised their hands or tentacles or claws. The restrictions passed easily. Humans would be limited. Humans would be controlled. Humans would be pushed back to their small corner of the galaxy. Captain Jack watched from the observation deck above the hall. He was a military man with short brown hair and strong hands. He had served in the human peacekeeping fleet for 20 years. He had saved alien lives more times than he could count. Now he watched as those same aliens voted against his people. Admiral Ben Carter stood beside him. He was older than Jack, with white hair and a calm face. He commanded the entire human fleet in council space, 500 ships, 50,000 soldiers, all of them ready to protect species that now wanted them gone. "What do we do?" Jack asked quietly. Ben did not answer right away. He watched walk back to her position. Her shoulders were straight, but Jack could see the sadness in her eyes. "We leave," Ben finally said. Jack turned to look at him, just like that. Just like that. Down in the hall, requested permission to speak one more time. The Chancellor allowed it. She stood tall and spoke clearly. "The human government has heard this vote," she said. "We accept your decision. If our presence is such a problem, we will remove it. Effective immediately, all human ships, soldiers, doctors, engineers, teachers, and diplomats will return to human space. All human aid programs will end. All human technology sharing will stop." The hall erupted in noise. Some aliens laughed, others looked confused. The representative smiled widely. "You are bluffing," he said. "You would never give up your influence." Looked at him with steady eyes. "We are not giving up anything," she said. "We are simply respecting your wishes. You want us gone, we will go." She turned and walked out of the hall. She did not look back. Over the next 72 hours, the galaxy witnessed something it had never seen before. Human ships lifted off from alien worlds by the hundreds. Doctors packed their equipment and said goodbye to patients they had treated for years. Engineers shut down power stations they had built with their own hands. Teachers hugged students who did not understand why they were leaving. There was no anger, there were no protests, there were no threats. Humans simply packed their bags and went home. Admiral Ben Carter oversaw the withdrawal from his flagship. He watched the reports come in from every sector. Human personnel were leaving peacefully and quietly. They took only what belonged to them. They damaged nothing. They hurt no one. On the third day, the last human ship crossed the border into human space. Ben gave the order to close the border. No human ships would enter Council space. No human help would be offered. He stood alone on the bridge and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, the aliens were celebrating their victory. They thought they had won. Ben knew the truth. The real test was just beginning. Back on the Galactic Council station, the lights flickered. The power grid had been designed by human engineers. No one else knew how to fix it. In the medical center, doctors stared at equipment they did not understand. The human staff had operated most of it. In the agricultural sector, farmers looked at soil reports with growing worry. The human advisors had always handled the complicated parts. The representative sat in his quarters, still smiling. He poured himself a drink and raised it to the empty room. "Good riddance," he said. He did not notice that the heating system had already started to fail. 3 weeks had passed since the humans left. The galaxy was starting to understand what it had lost. Counselor was old. His scales had turned gray many years ago, and his joints ached when he walked. He was one of the last still serving on the council. He had watched the humans arrive 2 centuries ago. He had seen them grow from curious newcomers to the backbone of galactic civilization. Now he watched everything fall apart. The reports on his desk told a terrible story. The collective was facing the worst famine in their history. Their crops were dying. The soil had turned bad. Human agronomists had been quietly fixing the soil balance for decades. No one had noticed because the humans never talked about it. They just did the work. Now the work was not being done, and people were starving. Put down the report and picked up another one. Pirate attacks had increased by 400%. Human patrol ships had protected 12 sectors of space. Now those sectors belonged to criminals. Trade ships were afraid to fly. Goods were not reaching the markets. Prices were going up everywhere. The third report was the worst. A plague had broken out on them. It was an old disease, one that had killed millions in the past. Human doctors had created a cure 50 years ago. They had given it to everyone for free. But the humans had taken the formula with them when they left. The cure was locked behind human borders, and they were dying again. Stood up slowly and walked to the council chamber. An emergency meeting had been called. Species that normally argued with each other were now united by fear. The representative was speaking when entered. His 4 arms waved in the air as he made excuses. "This is temporary," he insisted. "We will adapt. We do not need the humans." Walked to his seat and sat down heavily. He was too tired to be polite. "You are a fool," he said loudly. The chamber went silent. Everyone turned to look at the old. "You are all fools," continued. "Do you have any idea what the humans were doing for us? They never asked for credit. They never demanded payment. They simply helped. And you spat in their faces." The representative pointed at him with 2 of his arms. "They were manipulating us," he shouted. They were making us dependent on them. Laughed, but there was no happiness in the sound. Dependent, we were thriving, our people were healthy, our trade was strong, our worlds were at peace. That was not dependence, that was partnership. He stood up again, his old bones protesting. Look at us now. 3 weeks without humans, and we are already falling apart. How long before the first war starts? How long before millions die because we were too proud to say thank you? No one answered him. The chamber remained silent. Far away at the edge of human space, Commander Drake sat in her small office on Border Station 7. She was a young woman with dark hair and sharp eyes. Her job was simple now. Watch the border. Let no one through. Her communication console was filled with distress signals. Alien ships were calling for help. Medical emergencies, pirate attacks, natural disasters. The signals came in every hour, sometimes every minute. She was under orders not to respond. Had been a rescue pilot before the withdrawal. She had saved thousands of alien lives. She had received medals from 6 different species. Now she sat in her chair and listened to people die. A new signal came in. It was from a cargo ship. Pirates had attacked them. Their engines were damaged. They were drifting toward an asteroid field. They had 43 crew members on board. Please, the captain begged. Anyone, we need help. Our children are on this ship. Closed her eyes. She could reach them in 2 hours. She could save all 43. It would be easy. But she had orders. She turned off the communication console and walked away. Her hands were shaking. On the border station's observation deck, Merchant Captain Danny Cole watched the stars. He was a big man with a friendly face and rough hands. He had spent 30 years flying trade routes through Council space. He knew aliens from 100 different worlds. Many of them were his friends. Now he could not help them. Danny had received messages from old business partners. They were desperate. Trade had stopped. Goods were rotting in warehouses. Economies were collapsing. They begged him to bring supplies to restart the old routes. He wanted to help. Every part of him wanted to load up his ship and fly back into Council space. But the border was closed, and Danny understood why. A young officer approached him. Sir, another distress call from the sector. The plague is spreading fast. Danny nodded slowly. How many dead? 50,000, according to the last report. Maybe more by now. Danny looked out at the darkness between the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying. People he could have saved. People he would have saved 3 weeks ago. But 3 weeks ago, those same people had voted to push humanity away. Send the report to command, Danny said quietly. There is nothing we can do. The young officer hesitated. Sir, is this right, letting them suffer? Danny turned to look at him. The young man had probably never been to Council space. He had never shaken hands with an alien or shared a meal with someone from another world. He did not understand how much it hurt to do nothing. No, Danny said. It is not right, but it is what they asked for. They wanted us gone. We are gone. He turned back to the window. Maybe they will learn something from this. Maybe next time they will think before they throw away their friends. Back in the Council chamber, the meeting had ended with no solutions. Species blamed each other. Old arguments became new fights. The unity that humans had maintained for decades was breaking down. Walked slowly through the empty hallways of the station. The lights were dim now. The power grid was failing more often. No one knew how to fix it properly. He stopped at a window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere in that direction was human space. Somewhere out there were the people who had helped his species survive 3 different crises. The people who had asked for nothing except friendship. And the Council had told them they were not wanted. Was old enough to remember a time before humans. It had been a darker time, more wars, more suffering, more death. The humans had changed everything. They had brought hope to a galaxy that had forgotten what hope felt like. Now that hope was gone. We were fools. whispered to the empty hallway, and we may have destroyed ourselves. The lights flickered again and went dark for 10 long seconds. When they came back on, made a decision. He would find a way to reach the humans. He would apologize. He would beg if necessary. Because he knew the truth that others refused to see. Without humanity, the galaxy was doomed. 2 months had passed. The galaxy was burning. Ambassador stood at the window of her office on Border Station 1. She held it in her hand. It contained a message from the Galactic Council. She had read it 5 times already. The message was from High Chancellor himself. It demanded that humanity return to Council space immediately. It listed all the problems the galaxy was facing. Famines, plagues, wars, economic collapse. The message blamed humanity for leaving. It said humans had a duty to help. It said humans were being selfish and cruel. It did not contain a single word of apology. Put down the and sighed. She had expected something like this. The Council had never understood humanity. They thought humans helped because they wanted power. They could not imagine that anyone would do good things simply because those things were good. She sat down at her desk and typed a reply. It was very short. No. She sent the message and turned off her console. Let them think about that for a while. Across the border, the Galactic Council was in chaos. 12 species were now fighting each other over resources. The Dominion had collapsed economically. Their trade routes were gone. Their factories were closing. Their people were hungry and angry. The collective had lost half their agricultural worlds to famine. Refugees were flooding into neighboring territories. No one wanted them. Old hatreds were coming back to life. High Chancellor sat alone in his private chamber. His body was trembling. He had been leader of the Council for 50 years. He had guided the galaxy through many crises, but he had never faced anything like this. His advisors brought him reports every hour. Each report was worse than the last. Species were threatening to leave the Council. Border conflicts were becoming small wars. The economy was falling apart faster than anyone could track. And all of it had happened in just 2 months. Had tried everything. He had offered humanity territory. He had offered them trade rights. He had offered them seats of power. They had refused everything. He did not understand. What did they want? What would make them come back? Far from the Council chambers, in a small ship crossing human space, Captain Sam was having a similar conversation. Sam was retired now. He had commanded rescue ships for 40 years. He had saved more alien lives than he could count. Now he spent his days fishing on a quiet human colony. But his old friends would not leave him alone. His communication screen showed the face of a merchant he had known for decades. The merchant's scales were pale with sickness. He was dying from the plague that was sweeping his world. "Please, Sam," the merchant begged. "You have to help us. Your doctors have the cure. Millions will die without it." Sam leaned back in his chair. His heart was heavy. This man had been his friend for 30 years. They had shared meals together. They had celebrated holidays together. Sam had held this man's children when they were bobbies. But Sam also remembered what the Council had done. "I wish I could help you," Sam said slowly. "But it is not my decision. The border is closed." "Then open it," the merchant pleaded. "Talk to your leaders, make them understand." Sam shook his head. "They understand perfectly. We all do. We wanted to be your partners. You wanted us to be your servants. There is a difference." The merchant's eyes filled with tears. "We made a mistake. The Council made a mistake. Please do not punish ordinary people for the decisions of politicians." Sam was quiet for a long moment. He thought about all the times humans had helped the galaxy, all the sacrifices they had made, all the thanks they had never received. "I am sorry," he finally said. "I truly am, but we gave you everything we had for 200 years, and when we asked for simple respect, you threw us away. We cannot go back to the way things were. Not without something changing." "What needs to change?" the merchant asked desperately. Sam looked at his old friend with sad eyes. You need to understand what you did, really understand, and I do not think you do, not yet. He ended the call and sat alone in the darkness of his ship. Outside, the stars were beautiful and cold. 3 days later, Counselor arrived at the human border. His journey had nearly killed him. His old body was not made for space travel anymore. The ship he had borrowed was small and uncomfortable, but he had made it. Border Station 1 loomed before him. It was a massive structure, bristling with weapons and sensors. Human soldiers watched his approach with careful eyes, transmitted his identification, and requested permission to dock. He was not sure they would let him in. He was a council member, after all, one of the people who had voted to restrict humanity. But he had also voted against the restrictions. He had argued for humanity when no one else would. He hoped they remembered. After a long wait, a voice came through his speakers. Counselor, you are cleared to dock at Bay 14. Ambassador will meet you. Breathed a sigh of relief. At least they would talk to him. Was waiting when he stepped off his ship. She looked older than the last time he had seen her. The past 2 months had been hard on everyone. Counselor, she said politely, this is unexpected. Bowed his head. Ambassador, thank you for seeing me. They walked together through the station. Human soldiers watched them pass. Their faces were hard to read. Led him to a small meeting room. They sat across from each other at a simple table. No aides, no recorders, just 2 tired people trying to find a way forward. I am not here to demand anything, said immediately. I am not here to make excuses. I am here to apologize. Raised an eyebrow. Apologize. Yes, his voice was heavy with regret. I should have fought harder for you. I should have made them see what they were doing. I failed you. I failed everyone. Was silent for a moment. She had received many messages from the council in the past 2 months. Demands, threats, bribes. This was the first apology. You are the first one to say sorry, she said quietly. The first one in 2 months. Nodded sadly. I know, that tells you everything about what the council has become. They talked for hours, described the chaos in council space, listened without interruption. When he finished, she sat back and looked at him with thoughtful eyes. What do you want from us? She asked. Spread his hands. I want you to come back, but I know that is not enough. So I am asking instead, what would it take? What would make humanity willing to try again? Considered the question carefully. I do not know if we want any more, she finally admitted. You showed us who you really are. Maybe we needed to see that. His heart sank. Is there no hope at all? Looked at the old alien. He had crossed dangerous space to reach her. He had risked his life for a chance to apologize. He was different from the others. There is always hope, she said, but hope requires change, real change, the kind that comes from the heart, not from desperation. Nodded slowly. He understood. The council would need to do more than apologize. They would need to become different, better. He just hoped they could learn before it was too late. 4 months after the withdrawal, war finally came. The Dominion and the Collective had been arguing over a trade route for years. Human mediators had always kept the peace. They would sit both sides down, find common ground, and work out a solution. It was boring work, but it saved lives. Now there were no human mediators. The argument became a border dispute. The border dispute became shooting. The shooting became war. Admiral Ben Carter watched the battle reports from his flagship. His white hair seemed these days. The stress was wearing on everyone. The first week of fighting had killed 2 million people, and warships were destroying each other across 3 sectors. Civilian ships were caught in the crossfire. Space stations were burning. And neither side would back down. Ben turned off the display and walked to the observation window. His fleet was still stationed along the border. 500 ships, 50,000 soldiers, all of them watching a war they were not allowed to stop. Admiral, A young officer approached him nervously. "We are receiving distress signals from the combat zones. Refugee ships are heading toward our border." Ben closed his eyes. He had known this moment would come. "How many ships?" "Hundreds, sir. Maybe thousands by tomorrow. They are running from the war. They have nowhere else to go." Ben thought about his orders. No involvement in council affairs. The border was closed. Those were the rules. But the rules did not feel right anymore. "What kind of people are on those ships?" he asked. The officer checked his. "Families mostly, civilians who lost their homes. Many of them have children." Ben was quiet for a long time. He remembered why he had joined the fleet. It was not to follow orders blindly. It was to protect people who could not protect themselves. "Contact Earth Command," he said finally. "Tell them we have a situation, and tell them I need new orders." On the human colony world of New Haven, Dr. Morgan was already helping refugees. A small group had slipped through the border before it closed completely. They were living in a camp outside the main city. Had been a doctor on alien worlds for 15 years. She had treated every species in the council. Now she was retired, living a quiet life on a farming colony. But when she heard about the refugees, she could not stay away. The camp was simple, tents and basic shelters. Medical supplies were limited, but made do with what she had. Today she was treating a child. The little one had been injured during the escape from his. His parents watched with worried eyes as cleaned and bandaged the wound. "There," said gently, "all better, he will heal quickly." The mother grabbed hand. Her eyes were wet with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for helping us, after everything our people did to yours." Patted her hand. "You did not do anything. Politicians did. Children are not politicians." She watched the family walk away. The father carried the child carefully. The mother kept looking back at with grateful eyes. That night sat alone in her small office. She was thinking about the thousands of refugees still trapped in space. Families just like the one she had helped today. Children who had done nothing wrong. She opened her communication console and began typing a message. It was addressed to Earth Command. "I have been treating alien refugees on New Haven," she wrote. "They are frightened, they are hurt, they are innocent. Many of them are children. I understand why we closed the border. I understand the anger and the hurt. But if we become like them, they win. If we let innocent people die because we are bitter, we lose everything that makes us human. We are better than this. Please, open the border. Let us save who we can." She sent the message and hoped someone would listen. Meanwhile, High Chancellor was facing the end of his political career. The council was falling apart. Species were blaming him for everything. Some were threatening to remove him from power. He sat in his chamber, surrounded by advisors who had no solutions. The war between them was spreading. Other species were choosing sides. The whole galaxy was sliding toward destruction. "What do we do?" one advisor asked desperately. "How do we stop this?" Had no answer. He had spent 50 years believing that the council could handle anything. He had thought humanity was optional, a useful addition but not necessary. He had been so wrong. Late that night, made a decision. It was the hardest decision of his life. He walked to the main broadcast center of the council station. His aides tried to stop him. They wanted to know what he was doing. He ignored them. He stood before the cameras and began to speak. His words were transmitted to every world in council space, every species, every citizen. "My fellow beings," he said, "I am speaking to you tonight to confess my failures and to ask for forgiveness." The galaxy watched in stunned silence. 200 years ago, humanity joined our community. They brought gifts we did not deserve: medicine, food, peace. They asked for nothing except friendship, and we gave them suspicion and fear. Paused, his voice was shaking, but he continued. "When humanity left, I blamed them. I demanded their return. I never once admitted that we were wrong, that I was wrong, but I am admitting it now." He took a deep breath. "We were arrogant, we were ungrateful. We took everything humans gave us and repaid them with contempt. When they offered their hands in friendship, we slapped those hands away." Tears formed in his large black eyes, rarely showed emotion, but could not hold back. "I am sorry," he said simply. "The Council is sorry. We do not deserve humanity's help. We have no right to ask for their return, but we are asking anyway, not with demands, not with conditions, just with honest regret and the hope that perhaps someday they might forgive us." He ended the broadcast and stood alone in the empty room. Across the galaxy, billions of beings had watched. Some were angry, some were confused, but many felt something they had not felt in months: hope. On his flagship, Admiral Ben Carter received two things at the same time. The first was the recording of speech. The second was a new set of orders from Earth Command. He read the orders twice to make sure he understood. Then he read them a third time. A smile slowly spread across his tired face. He walked to the bridge where his crew was waiting anxiously. They had all seen the speech. They all wanted to know what would happen next. Ben stood before them and spoke clearly. "I have new orders from Earth Command. Our position has changed." The bridge was silent. Everyone held their breath. "Open the borders," Ben said. "Rescue operations are authorized. We are going back." The cheer that erupted shook the walls of the ship. Officers hugged each other. Some cried openly. They had been waiting for this moment for 4 long months. Ben watched his crew celebrate. He thought about all the lives they would save, all the families they would reunite, all the wounds they would heal. Humanity was going home. 6 months after the withdrawal, humanity returned to the stars. Captain Jack stood on the bridge of his ship as it crossed the border into Council space. Behind him flew 100 other vessels: rescue ships, medical ships, supply ships, engineers and doctors and diplomats. The first aliens they encountered were refugees, thousands of ships filled with frightened families. They had been drifting in space for weeks, hoping someone would save them. Human rescue teams worked around the clock. They brought food and water to starving crews. They treated the sick and wounded. They guided damaged ships to safety. No one was turned away. No one was left behind. Word spread quickly through the galaxy. Humanity was back. Ambassador led the diplomatic mission to the Council. She brought with her a document that outlined humanity's conditions for full cooperation. The conditions were simple but firm. First, humanity would receive a permanent seat on the Council with full voting rights. They had been this for 200 years. That time was over. Second, all species receiving human aid would contribute to mutual defense. No more free riders. Partnership meant working together, not just taking. Third, any future sanctions or restrictions against humanity would trigger immediate and permanent withdrawal. There would be no second chances. This was their final offer. High Chancellor read the document carefully. His advisors argued about every line. Some thought the demands were too harsh. Others thought humanity was being generous. Silenced them all with a wave of his thin arm. "We accept," he said, "every condition without changes." The agreement was signed that same day. Admiral Ben Carter coordinated the peacekeeping efforts. His first priority was ending the war between the and the. Human negotiators met with both sides. They listened to grievances. They proposed solutions. They refused to give up. 3 days later, the war was over. The fighting stopped, prisoners were exchanged, a peace treaty was signed. What the galaxy could not solve in 4 months, humans resolved in a weekend. Dr. Morgan returned to the field. She led medical teams to the worlds hit hardest by plague and famine. The cure was distributed freely again. Food shipments arrived at starving colonies. Hope returned to places that had forgotten what hope felt like. Worked 18-hour days. She barely slept. But every time she saved a life, she felt it was worth it. One evening, a elder approached her. He was thin and weak from the plague, but he was recovering. He took her hand gently and pressed it to his forehead. It was the highest sign of respect in his culture. "We treated you badly," he said quietly. "We voted against you, and still you came back to save us. Why?" Smiled tiredly. "Because helping people is who we are. It is what we do. Politics cannot change that. Anger cannot change that. It is in our nature." The elder bowed his head. "Then your nature is better than ours." Shook her head. "No, our nature is the same. You just forgot it for a while. You will remember again." Counselor watched the changes from his seat in the council chamber. The old was weaker now. The journey to human space had taken a lot out of him, but he refused to retire. He wanted to see this moment. Ambassador was speaking to the full council. Her voice was calm and confident. She was no longer a visitor asking for permission. She was a partner demanding respect. "We are here because we believe in second chances," said. "We are here because we believe people can change. We are here because despite everything, we still see the good in you." She paused and looked around the chamber. She saw faces that had once dismissed her. Now those same faces were listening with respect. "But make no mistake," she continued. "We are not the same as before. We have learned lessons too. We know now that kindness can be taken for weakness. We know that silence can be mistaken for surrender. We will not make those mistakes again." Her voice grew stronger. "From this day forward, humanity will be your equal, not your servant, not your protector, your partner, and we expect to be treated as such." The council voted unanimously to accept the new agreement. Even the representative raised his hand in favor. He had lost everything in the past 6 months. His arrogance had cost his people dearly. He would not make that mistake again. That night there was a celebration on the council station. Humans and aliens danced together. Old friendships were renewed. New friendships were formed. For the first time in months, the galaxy felt whole again. Captain Jack stood on the observation deck watching the festivities. He was tired but happy. They had done it. They had come back. And this time things would be different. A young officer approached him nervously. She was barely an adult, still wearing the uniform of a junior cadet. "Captain," she said quietly, "I wanted to thank you for coming back, for saving my family." Jack looked at her. She was so young. She probably did not even remember the time before the withdrawal. "You do not have to thank us," he said gently, "but you do have to remember." "Remember what?" Jack turned to look at the stars. Somewhere out there were billions of beings, humans and aliens, all of them trying to build something better. "Remember what you almost lost," he said. "Remember how close the galaxy came to destruction, and remember that it was pride and fear and ingratitude that brought you there." The young officer nodded seriously. "I will remember, Captain, I promise." Jack smiled. "Good, then maybe the next generation will be wiser than the last." He walked away, leaving the young officer alone with her thoughts. The party continued behind him. Music and laughter filled the station. In the great hall, High Chancellor made a final speech. His voice carried across the chamber and was broadcast to every world in council space. "Today we learned that power is not simply strength," he said. "It is also grace. Humanity showed us both. They had the power to abandon us forever. Instead, they chose to forgive. They chose to help. They chose to give us a second chance we did not deserve." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We will not forget again. We will not take them for granted again. And we will spend the rest of our days proving that their faith in us was not misplaced." Across the galaxy, billions watched and listened. Some cried. Some cheered. All of them understood that something had changed forever. Humanity had taught the universe a lesson it would never forget. Never take kindness for weakness. Never mistake silence for surrender. And never, ever forget who your true friends are. In her office, watched the celebration on her screen. She was too tired to join the party. but she was smiling. They had done it, not through war or threats or violence, through patience, through strength, through simply being who they were. She turned off the screen and looked out at the stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems, new opportunities. But tonight, for the first time in 6 months, the galaxy was at peace. And humanity was finally home.